What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, with another edition of Unleash, the weekly panel discussion show. And noticeably, the panel was just a tad bit trimmer this week. The homie Jay Petrie is out for personal reasons. So he has left me, Ant Walker, along with the jack of all trades who's mastered them, Ben Duffy, senior editor, Sherlock.com. We are here to hold down the fort. Man, that intro sucked. I'm going to start over. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleash, the weekly panel discussion show. And of course, as you can tell this week, the panel is slightly slimmer. So we've got Jay Petrie, the homie who normally does the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is out for personal reasons. So I and Mr. Ben Duffy will be holding down the fort. So no need to introduce him. You know him as the jack of all trades who has mastered them all, the senior editor of Sherlock.com. Ben, how you doing?
I'm doing really well. As you pointed out, we are without Jay this week. He will always be missed when he's not here, but we will do our best to represent the brand. Absolutely.
So Jay, for those who aren't privy to this, he's normally the guy who organizes everything. So in addition to just us three lending our voices to the various things that we talk about, I typically do hosting duties. Ben does post-production, and Jay does the pre-production. He puts together the outlines and whatnot. So if you notice the show is unusually unorganized, that's because, hey, that's not what we normally do. So, but I thought it would be a good time to just kind of play with the format and not necessarily stick to the rigid standard we normally have. And we can just have more of a free-flowing conversation with several interesting topics, because despite the fact mixed martial arts was essentially on hold for yet another week, interesting things have occurred in the sport and around the sport that I think warrant our attention, and I'd rather not kind of confine us to the normal format if it's just us two in a regular back and forth conversation. So let's get into it, if you don't mind, sir. All right. Now, we would kind of be doing ourselves and the audience a disservice if we once again failed to acknowledge the intersection of sports and politics. So for everyone who's been living under a rock, the past week in the United States has been quite interesting from the news cycle standpoint. The United States Capitol was taken over briefly by right-wing extremists. And of course, there seems to be a great overlap in that world with our world in mixed martial arts. So President Donald Trump, who has been sort of this vocal spokesperson for the UFC during his presidency, and even before, quite the spokesman for mixed martial arts, and kind of helped push the sport forward at some key moments. I don't want to take credit away from him. However, all right, so of course now the relationship between the UFC and President Trump has now kind of come to a head. We've seen a lot of his political allies distance themselves from him. We've seen corporations and brands separating themselves. I read an article, believe it was yesterday, where banks like JP Morgan Chase were refusing to back certain GOP allies that voted to contest the election results and whatnot. So this has turned into a mess beyond just the political realm, and it's crossed over into the business world. And of course, the UFC is quite the business that has been backed by Trump for a number of years now. Ben, do you think it's time that the UFC distance itself from President Trump in a vocal way?
It would be an appropriate time to do so. Having said that, I don't think they will, because the relationship between Trump and the UFC, it's a relationship between Trump and Dana White. And Dana has very much the same temperament, where you can't tell him what he can or cannot do. So, I mean, even if he's inwardly cringing about this, I don't think we'll see any public move by the UFC unless word comes down from above. Because the one difference between the UFC of the last 3 or 4 years and before is that there is now a parent company in place that is kind of more globally aware and has a brand larger than the UFC that it has to be aware of. So if word comes down from Endeavor or word comes across from ESPN or ABC, I mean, that would be a different matter. But of its own volition, no, the UFC isn't going to say anything about it. I wish they would, but I don't think they will.
I mean, do you think that is a move that we can expect Disney or Endeavor to make at some point, considering the number of brands that have kind of turned their back on at least public support of right-wing causes?
I think it'll probably, I mean, and I'm not saying this is a good thing, but what I think is the UFC will just kind of keep quiet and it'll blow over. I don't think you'll see Dana White coming out and making a loud public statement in support of President Trump. You won't hear anything over the broadcast. They'll just be quiet about it. January 20th will pass by. There will be a hopefully peaceable transition of power to the new administration, and this will go away. I'm not saying that's the good thing. It's not what I'd wish for, but that's what I would expect will happen.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. I think this is just a moment that they're just going to be quiet about it all, unless, of course, they're forced from the higher ups to do something to the contrary. I'm reminded of several times that we've seen contradictory things from the UFC, and this is kind of one of those instances where I kind of glad they don't say anything to an extent, because I'd feel it'd be inauthentic. We were talking about the George Floyd tribute that they made on that one broadcast, and my gut reaction to it was like, man, this seems like crap to me. It seems like lip service, and I think anything of that sort from the UFC or Dana White in particular would be lip service. I mean, this was someone who had for years now has been very vocally campaigning for him, making appearances at the Republican National Convention, giving speeches and whatnot in support of Trump. So I don't see him, going against that unless absolutely forced to. And even if he's forced to, it'll be the most inauthentic thing I think we'd ever have seen. And just like a lot of these other corporations that have come out against Trump now, or pushing for further impeachment or resignations or whatnot, a lot of this comes off pretty insincere, in my opinion. These are still companies that will donate to certain causes that benefit this side anyway. So you can put out a statement that says Black Lives Matter. You can put out a statement that says, hold hands and rainbows and everything else. But if your actions are saying otherwise, those words really don't matter to me. And I think anyone who looks at it beyond the surface level probably would agree as well. So, but I think it will be important to note sort of the ripple effects on the world of mixed martial arts. Pat Miletich, former UFC champion, currently a broadcaster and quite the vocal conspiracy theorist, was on his Facebook page with multiple pictures of him at the rally/riots and claiming to have seen no violence. So I think I think we're going to see more things like that, and I think that's probably the bleed over into our world. We're going to see all these fighters that and managers and promoters and whatnot that are allies of these sort of causes. They're going to pop up out the woodwork with things like this, with posts supporting it. Stephan Bonner was one of the ones vocally against the let's see. Let's go ahead and bring him in.
What are you gonna do?
Oh, what's up, Jay?
Hey, boys.
How you doing? Oh man, how you feeling, man? You better?
No, but I'm getting through it.
Okay, you sure you good to do this, man?
Let's do this, boys.
All right.
Yeah. He's just gonna blame Antifa for it and move on.
Yeah.
Hey, man. Stat of the week. My stat of the week is 15 minutes. I couldn't go more than 15 minutes knowing you boys were on the air without me.
Yeah, that's a beautiful stat. All right, so you guys want to just start over and
no,
all right. Let's roll on.
All right, so welcoming special guest Jay Petrie, back to the show, Jay. It's good to see you, and very very pleasant surprise to have you anchor the panel yet again. So we were talking about the riot at the Capitol and how it's affecting our sport. Like what the ripple effects for mixed martial arts in particular. Will the UFC have any public statement disavowing itself of Donald Trump?
Only if there were UFC officials, affiliates, representatives, fighters, most likely in that context, that are there. Like Pat Miletich is was there, but he's not obviously on the best of terms with the UFC. But in terms of if Jorge Masvidal was there and had snapped pictures or some name, yes, but otherwise, no. No, I don't think I think doing that would draw attention to themselves and remind people, oh, that's right. They made that dumb documentary, Combatant in Chief. So no.
Speaking of that dumb documentary, which it was trash. Like let's not mince any words. It was total garbage. But that documentary no longer exists on Fight Pass. It's now listed as a private video, I believe. Do you think this is part of the cleanup job here?
From what I heard very briefly, the UFC is actually just kind of reorganizing. That's the official word. Is that it? No, they didn't just remove this. They removed a bunch of their old documentaries to do that. But whether that remains to be seen. Dana White has also pulled off from his Twitter account the lovely anti-media video. So.
I just hope he re-edits it with me on there. That's my only wish. But actually, in his defense or the UFC's defense or whoever the case may be, I was doing research for one of my MMA on Point scripts a couple months back, I think it was, and I needed to watch one of those documentaries, and I could not find it. So I believe this is something that was scrubbed quite some time ago. It's just that we didn't care. Until now, no one actually looked for it. I was the only nerd up at 3 a.m. Researching random foolishness to realize something was missing. I don't even think I was looking for the Combatant in Chief one. I forget which. I think maybe the Origins of the Octagon. I think that's the short that I was looking for, and to find one particular quote, and it wasn't there. So I went over the Facebook page, went through the YouTube page, went through Fight Pass, went through ESPN Plus. Nothing. So this is probably much ado about nothing. Just very interesting timing, considering what's going on in the real world outside of the octagon. So
UFC also had movies. Remember that for a short amount of time, had martial arts films on Fight Pass. I think they've also been pulled as well. The 36 Chamber of Shaolin and whatever. I think that Fight Pass is a mess right now. Like, I'll be straight. Like, I was doing research a little while, at the end of last year for a Pat Miletich fight. Hey, it all comes full circle. And I couldn't get to it. Could not access I'd go to the fight. I'd select it. I'd do the search, and then it would kick you back to the main screen. So,
yeah, Fight Pass. The format of Fight Pass is a mess. So I'm willing to bet that this is just another part of Fight Pass being a total disaster right now, as far as user friendliness and how reliable it is as an archive. You talk about perhaps the worst search feature I've ever seen online ever. Just total crap. It is horrible. So this is probably just another part of that problem. But hey, nothing's going to stop you from putting on horns, face paint, and storming a federal building. So there it is. All right, gentlemen. So before we go along here, it is important to note that the UFC is returning to Fight Island. I don't even know if it really can be called Fight Island anymore. They're going to Etihad Arena in Yas Island, near the same location as the Flash Forum, which was technically Fight Island. But it's kind of hard to keep that name because now so many things are different. They're going to have fans there. And updated COVID-19 protocols. Fellas, what do you make of the UFC having fans in Abu Dhabi and the protocols themselves are around their presence?
I mean, the protocols themselves on paper look comparable to what other spectator sports have tried to do. So it's the same thing that we said back in May when the UFC started putting on empty arena events, and we were talking about the precautions that they were laying out for their own employees, for media, and for fighters. That, okay, if they follow these, I mean, this looks like about as well as you can do. The question, will be how closely they're observed.
It's just too many people. Like there's a few issues, of course. First of all, is the I think we're almost to the 10,000th fabrication from Dana White, who said very specifically, "I will not have fans in a partly filled arena. It's all or nothing." Dana White was very clear about this, and the Etihad will have 2,000 out of 18,000. Whoops, I don't know how that possibly got by us, but it's just 2,000 more people to spread it around and bring things with them to the hotels and go to the places that the fighters are going to also. Like you've heard time and time again, the fighters talk about, oh yeah, the dirt bikes or the motorcycles or the go-karts or the paddle boats. Well, now you have 2,000 more gross people touching stuff and not washing their hands. And, it just, what's going to happen. Like there's a bubble here, but this is not a bubble anymore. Like the bubble blew up about as badly as like the NFL's bubble.
Yeah, good point there, man. I think also it's notable where to point out Dana White did make that all or nothing statement about having a capacity crowd as opposed to something in a reduced way to just get a few people in the door. But if there were any place that the UFC runs with a limited crowd, it has to be Abu Dhabi, considering the government there has essentially given the UFC a stipend to run their fights. And from what I recall, they weren't even the UFC wasn't even collecting a gate revenue because they got a flat fee from the government. So this seems like the time that they would go against that word.
Yeah, and if they don't, it's just money being left on the table. I mean, even 2,000 seats going at an average of $500 a pop, that's $1 million. That's just a cool million being left, on the table if they don't try it. So I understand why they're doing it. That's one reason. The other reason is they want there to be some crowd noise for their first ABC event. Like we are used to, at this point, 33 cards later, we're used to being able to hear a pin drop or a corner man fart. But, for their first card with the new broadcast partner, they want there to be some hype.
Yeah, you know what? The NFL has been doing that. They've been piping in crowd noise for empty stadiums. Now, I'm not much of an NFL watcher anymore, so I can't speak to the viewing experience. Maybe you guys can. But do you think that would be a decent enough solution? And at this point, I think the audience is used to watching sports without a crowd. Would that be a turnoff to the casual viewer?
I think it would. I mean, boxing has done that on a few separate occasions, and it always feels so uncomfortable when you like the commentators will be like, "Oh, there's no fans in the building," and then suddenly there will be crowd oohs and ahs. You're like, "Ooh, that feels uncomfortable." I mean, every sport's trying to find the right way to handle this. Like you go from baseball when they had cardboard cutouts in the stands of all the people like that. And it was kind of fun and enjoyable because they couldn't have people. And football, certain football stadiums allowed for some crowds. Like there was, I think it was the Saints game the other day where there were fans that they were fans kind of hanging out doing their thing. Clearly not socially distant, but I don't care. It's not my, they must have figured it out some way. But then you got like the WWE that has, and I think NBA did this too. They have walls and walls of screens of individual like panels like us popped up, and you get to see people go oh and so, and you can hear them too. They're all oohing and ahhing. I tell you, boys, and maybe I'm going to be taking some flack for this. I do not miss crowds.
I don't either. I really don't either. I like the sound of shin on flesh in the empty arena. I like the sound of cornermen just frantically shouting out instructions and the opponent hearing him and then adjusting his game appropriately. I like all of that. Ben, do you think that the casual viewer might actually get more into the product if there isn't a crowd there?
I mean, I grew up in the DC area, you know, with the Washington Bullets, then Wizards. So I am used to empty arenas. So, you know, on a certain level, I you know, it's old hat to me. I don't miss it as a spectator on TV. Like, I don't need to like make a great sports moment feel great to me. If anything, I will miss, or I have missed, taking in sporting events as a fan myself in the stands more than I miss crowd noise on TV. I could do with empty arena MMA forever. I've really enjoyed it. I know that kind of last summer, we had a couple talks about this, you know, Matt Wells was on, and we, you know, all of us were kind of going back and forth about what we liked and didn't like about it. At this point, I like it. I like being able to hear what's really going on. We've been treated to moments that feel just more intimate, more embedded in the action. We've gotten to hear interactions that we never would have gotten to before. I mean, we've talked about them in our year-end awards, Teixeira versus Smith, you know, those kind of things that we would have missed those subtleties if that fight had taken place in 2018 or 2019. So I mean, I don't miss it.
It almost feels like comparing like an evening with set of a band to like a big arena show. You know, just the whole experience feels more like,
yeah,
I'm right there in media row punching.
It's the tiny desk concert of MMA.
That's right. It does. It and I like that. I like that feeling. I like not hearing woos and boos and nonsense and the wave. Like, that can all die.
Jay wins the whole show. I had forgotten how much I fucking hated woos.
Woo birds are just, they're the worst. Like, I mean, we heard them in Houston and we were looking around going,
it's like, why is this existing? Why is this a thing? Do you think it makes its way to Abu Dhabi?
If I hear a woo, I'm 100%. Muting my TV for the rest of the night.
100% we will hear a woo of some sort.
Because these tickets are like, what, $1,500 a pop or something like that?
They're a lot of money.
Yeah, so I'd assume if you're spending that much to watch a fight night card in Abu Dhabi, you might have some level of, I don't know, some level of sophistication, dare I use that word in the context of mixed martial arts, enough not to, or enough of an appreciation of the sport itself to not be an idiot in the stands. Is that, am I asking too much? Do I expect too much of the MMA fans out there?
Jane, you're ignorant.
I'm picturing the type of people you usually see in like the high roller row at a show in Vegas.
Actually, yeah.
And you get all types.
You're right. You know what? I'm thinking about when the times that I've covered an event, and especially at the weigh-ins or the ceremonial weigh-ins, when they sometimes have fan seating, the VIP fan seating in front of the media, and the amount of morons you see there. Yeah. So they'll be wooing. Yeah. That's wow. Woo. What are we doing with our lives? All right. Well, while we're on the topic of the UFC returning to Yas Island, we might as well get into some level of discussion of the actual fight card. Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar will be the headliner. A fantastic featherweight bout, probably determining who's next in line for a title shot, since it seems like Volkanovski can never get away from Holloway, no matter how many times he wins. Gentlemen, what are your initial thoughts about this matchup?
It's a fantastic matchup. It is exactly the kind of fight you want on top of a fight night card. It is very divisionally relevant, yet it's the kind of fight that I didn't think of until they mentioned it. I was like, well, hell, that sounds great to me. And it should be an absolute banger. I defy you to name me the last time either of these guys was in a bad fight. Like this is the perfect, perfect UFC on ABC 1 headliner. It's not even like, oh, Kane and JDS are going to give us an all-time scrap, and no, somebody's dead in a minute. This isn't going to be that either. Like, there might be a finish, but it's probably not going to be a quick one. If there is, this is a banger.
This card is the first one. UFC on ABC 1. I'm not talking about UFC on ESPN 20. That is not so good. And 257, which is, well, it's not bad for a $70, by the way, $70 pay-per-view. Now the pay-per-view prices have risen in 2021. This card is the card I wish that the UFC would build back in the Fox era, where instead of just names and important people you'd have to put on there, Rashad Evans and Phil Davis kind of thing, you have bangers. Just the kind of fights that people are going to text other people and like, oh my God, are you watching this fight? Carlos Condit versus Matt Brown's the co-main event. I don't care how old they are. These are the two guys that are going to be able to do that thing they did 10 years ago, just like normal, and still probably take the shots. I mean, Carlos Condit, I still don't believe he's ever actually suffered a straight knockout. Like, his only TKO is the Woodley leg kicks. So forget it. Just that's just magic in the woods. And then you got Holloway, Kattar, that I've talked about this before, that featherweight's the division that you put 1 and 4 together, it's going to be great. You put 6 and 2 together, it's going to be a blast. 7 and 3, oh hell yes. So, I mean, they almost couldn't do any wrong. And as you go down the card, you see this event is very clearly positioned for exciting results. And it's not done like Bellator's debut on CBS Sports, where Bellator put a bunch of squash matches where you're like, well, I know who's going to win. Here's a big favorite. Who is going to win in Carlos Condit versus Matt Brown? I don't know.
There's one squash match.
Buckley to Kiriko, but that at the same time, that's a kind of squash match, but that's a highlight squash match. That's different than oh boy, we get 3 rounds of murder.
That's like the Raymond Daniels fight on every Bellator card.
Exactly. That's right. That's the mayhem fight. Like, well, something stupid's going to happen. Now Buckley gets clipped. That's also crazy. So that the UFC set themselves up well with this 5-fight ABC card, and then the next one after it on Wednesday, not so much.
Yeah, you know what? Before we highlight a particular fight on the card, that something we normally do at the end of the show, but I'm mixing things up since I'm in charge today. I want to talk about how we see this main event going, because, like you said, Jay, you don't know who's going to win between these two. This is not a squash match between Holloway and Kattar. I'm curious as to what version of Holloway we get. I do think, although he did look really good against Volkanovski in that rematch, I'm still concerned about the amount of damage he's taken over the last couple of years and what effect that has against someone like Calvin Kattar. That can be particularly important, because Kattar is one of the slickest boxers at featherweight, has tremendous hand speed, he's got great power, and he's a fantastic counter puncher as well. So considering the way their power output blends together, I got a feeling this could end up looking sort of like a lower grade version of Holloway's unsuccessful bid at 155 against Dustin Poirier. A good boxer with heavy hands and good countering, just outlasting Holloway, because Holloway simply doesn't have enough pop in his punches to make things as consequential. Gentlemen, am I jumping on a limb here? How crazy do I sound with that?
No, I don't think you sound crazy at all. You're right in that a lot of it will come down to how Holloway looks. He's up there with Jose Aldo and Shogun Rua in the Hall of Fame of oldest fighters under 30 that the sport has ever seen. Like, it's unbelievable that he's like 3 years younger than Calvin Kattar, just in terms of how fresh Kattar feels as a fighter, even if you've known him from like his regional days. He just doesn't seem like a 32-year-old, certainly not when Holloway is 29. But even if the best version of Holloway comes out, I think this is an interesting and tricky and dangerous style matchup for him. And for the very reason you mentioned, like it could look like maybe a less lopsided version of the Poirier fight. Kattar brings a lot of the same things to the table.
Jay, what's your initial thoughts on how this fight plays out?
I'm really picking up what you boys are putting down here. I do. I see that Kattar can do the whole wind up and load up on his shots a little bit when he gets frustrated kind of game, like he did to Jeremy Stevens when Jeremy Stevens finally started landing on him a little bit. And he said, no, we're done here. And he elbowed his face off. I can see a real big question answer in the first round because Holloway, we know what he can do. His last 9 fights or so, he's landed about 100 significant strikes or more. Period. The end. Just every opponent, all these different style matchups, everything they can throw at him, he will hit you in the face repeatedly. So Kattar is going to have to deal with that and figure to force Max to fight off his back foot. And Max is a guy who will go forward for, his best success was when he countered Poirier's thing. So I think it being the game plan when he fought Poirier, except for he'll have more success because at 145, he'll have a little bit more pop relative to his weight class to kind of get Kattar's respect and back him up a little bit. So I can see this being a first 2 rounds are really something, and then Max gets that groove thing he likes to do.
Yeah, definitely something exciting. I'm anticipating a perfect beginning of the ABC broadcast world, because man, these two it just seems like the Tasmanian Devil and Wile E. Coyote just colliding with one another. This is going to be a pretty good fight. All right, so as far as other fights on the card are concerned, I want to point out the return of Santiago Ponzinibbio. This man has been away for a very, very, very long time, and making his return against Jing Liang. I think this is a great fight as well for the welterweight division. How do we see this one playing out?
Man, ring rust. I want to see the effective ring rust on the is it Genchi Boa, I think is his nickname.
Yeah.
To see what he's going to be like after being away for so long. Like this isn't a normal. This is a 2 years and almost 3 months coming up on that he's been away for various horrible, difficult reasons like injuries and infections and surgeries. So this guy, he's I think he's my age, so he's not old, but he's aged a lot, I'm sure, along the way. I can picture this fight kind of a lot like when Li Jingliang matched up against Easy Dos Santos, and Dos Santos, crazy, flashy, powerful striker, 2 bolts colliding, what's going to happen, and Li Jingliang simply was tougher and could walk through it, because we know that Jingliang, his chin is ridiculous. Forget it. Like Ponzinibbio will do everything in his power to get the knockout, but I don't think even with his power, like putting away Neil Magny in that last fight, just putting Neil Magny out and putting Gunny Nelson out. Eye poke notwithstanding, it's going to be a headhunting match. I think it is, and I'm with that. It is just another contender for fight of the night. Like this, straight up, this is the makings of 2 guys who are going to stand in the pocket and throw ridiculous bombs where partway through the play-by-play will be like, oh my God, what is happening right now? How is he still standing? That we're going to probably hear that from Dan Hardy or Brandon Fitzgerald or John Anik at the end of it, be like, oh my God, these guys have taken so much damage. What is going on here? That's what I'm expecting.
Ben, I'm, let me know if I'm walking down the right path here. Before Ponzinibbio went out for his various injuries and surgeries and whatnot, what's going on with him, I had him pegged as the dark horse in the welterweight division. I actually thought he'd be the one to dethrone Tyron Woodley at the time. So I think with this matchup, I think we're seeing how high the UFC is on Ponzinibbio. To get a name like Jing Liang, a name we know and respect, a name who's been in there with some top level opposition, but also not the absolute top of the heap. It's not like he's making his return against a Leon Edwards or anything.
Or a Khamzat Chimaev.
But you see what I'm saying there? I think what this is a winnable fight for him, a fight that would boost him right back into title contention. What do you say, Ben?
Yes, it is a fight that could boost him back into title contention. At the time of his last win, when he knocked out Neil Magny, he was my go-to example of how hard it is to break into the top 10 at welterweight. Because I said, this is a guy who's on a 7-fight winning streak over increasingly good opposition, has beaten people like Gunnar Nelson and Neil Magny in a way that really only top 10 fighters have done to them. And, then he just disappeared for 2 years and change. If he is still even comparable to the guy he was, he beats Jing Liang Li. He in an exciting fight, but one where he's just clearly there's more firepower coming from his side, and he inserts himself right back into the top 10, top 15 in the weight class. It really is a huge question mark. I mean, anytime you've got a guy who is a blood and guts action fighter getting into his 30s, has had staph infections. I mean, staph infections like that are serious and systemic. They take something out of a fighter. Like some fighters come back from that and they're never quite the same. He's had surgeries. He's had COVID. Like some fighters that have had COVID and just had to completely scrap fights, not just postpone them for 2 weeks, when they've had it to the point where like, I can't train, I'm actually feeling like shit. They've not been the same when they come back. So there are a lot of question marks hanging over Santiago Ponzinibbio. As a fan of the sport, I want him to come back and be the Ponzi of old. Like it was a happier place, with him here. So I'm hoping for that, but I'm not banking on it. There are just too many question marks. I think we'll know within 5 minutes.
It feels like a trap. Answer me this: does this fight feel like a trap fight for Ponzinibbio? Because we know how friggin' tough Li Jingliang is.
I wouldn't necessarily call it a trap fight. I mean, it's certainly a tough out, but I do think there is some wiggle room there for him, considering how long he's been out, considering what he's battled with since he was out. Keep in mind, I believe the last time we saw him in action, he was in Buenos Aires, Argentina, like a big part of their expansion plans. So this is someone that I believe they have faith in, which is why you get a matchup where a guy's tough, but potentially beatable. So that way, if you lose to him, like, well, he's tough. If you beat him, well, he's a name that we recognize, who's been in there against some good guys. So therefore, that puts him right back where he left off. I think he's kind of got a win-win either way. So Ponzinibbio's in it. He set himself up with success for this one. But to what Ben said, I mean, considering what he has physically gone through since we last seen him, he has a huge uphill climb. However, if we are to believe that he made it through camp okay, then the uphill part of that climb is over with, and now it's just time to get in the cage and get it on.
And I mean, worst case scenario, if he loses to Lee, I mean, unless he just looks like an absolute husk of himself, if he loses, he just gets slotted into that 15 through 25 reliable action fighter mold. He's right in there with your Vicente Luques and Nico Prices. And that's not a bad place to be either.
Right, and get a win over names like that, he'll be right back to where they tried to put him with this fight. So he's playing with house money at this point. I think Ponzinibbio is doing all right, fellas. So any other fights on this card that you want to give a little bit of shine to?
Watch out for Phil Hawes, boys. Megatron. I am really curious if he can take that step. Like he thrashed. Oh boy, Mamba. Hold on. Training partner of Robert Whitaker, Jacob Malkoun. and he
Okay.
thrashed that guy in a couple seconds, and we're like, oh, okay. And he destroyed that 6'6" guy from AKA, wreck shopping this guy. So I mean, Nasruddin Imavov is kind of an untested French fighter, who we're jury's still out. His best win is what, Jordan Williams? Like we don't know yet. And I think this is that, to me, based on what I've seen out of Haas and based on what I've seen out of Imavov, this is a showcase fight. And I think that Megatron may finally give UFC fans that showcase that the UFC has tried to get out of him by bringing him back on the Contender Series and going through all that mess. So yeah, I think Megatron Haas, he could surprise some people this weekend.
All right, Ben. Any fight that you want to highlight in particular off this card?
I mean, you could pick anything. When you look at a fight night card like this, when south of the top 2 or 3 fights, there's not much in the way of like top level contenders. You're kind of looking at the direction people are headed. And a bad fight night card, it's one where you look at the undercard and wow, 10 of the 14 fighters are coming off a loss. 3 of them are coming off of like at least 2 losses, things like that. Here, most of these fighters are coming off a win. Well, hell, we got 2 undefeated fighters. Like, when was the last time we had just 2 undefeated fighters in the middle of a card? And Puna Soriano and Dusko Todorovic I don't think either of them are future title contenders. Like, they're going to lose. Well, one of them is going to lose the O this weekend. But, I mean, neither of them is long for the ranks of the undefeated, but that fight should just be a slaughterhouse. Omari Akhmedov and Tom Breese, like 2 guys, they've got something to prove. They're both coming off wins, but still have question marks hanging over them. Yeah, just a lot of fighters that are going to be really motivated, not just to win, but put on a good show. That's a recipe for a card that just sizzles start to finish.
All right, good. So, can't say that that we didn't earn that long hiatus between just fight card after fight card after fight card after fight card, but kind of thankful now we're at the end of that break and we're back on the horse and getting some regular mixed martial arts. So of course next week will be the Conor McGregor Dustin Poirier rematch, and that will be preceded by the Michael Chiesa and
Neil
Magny fight for the main event on Wednesday. So next week we have a lot more just pure fight talk. But now let's get back into some of the interesting topics. So Dana White made a very, very clear point toward the end of 2020, and that was around 60 or so fighters would be removed from the roster come year end. We are now couple weeks into 2021, and we haven't really seen that axe drop. We've seen a few prominent fighters, Yoel Romero, Rumble Johnson, Anthony Pettis being the most notable, walk away from the UFC, whether they just didn't re-up their contract or they were released early. Individual debates there, but now we don't see the amount of people removed from the roster that we were once told. Was Stana just blowing smoke?
Somebody's already hit it on the head. Trent Reinsmith from Bloody Elbow. I can't call him friend of the show because I don't think we've had him on, but I will seek to remedy that. Like, he'd be a great guy to talk to. He said it perfectly. He's like, this was clearly just a stick held over the head of the roster for that last couple months of the year to get them to take fights that they otherwise might not.
Nailed it.
It was just a complete gun to the head. Like, like it was the threat of decimation. We got a 600 fighter roster. 60 of you are going to be gone. Hey, do you want to fight so-and-so on short notice? So I think that's what it was. I don't doubt that they had a legitimate, if not number of fighters, percentage of payroll they wanted to cut, since they, in very high profile manner, let some of their higher priced contenders go. But no, I mean, I don't know if they ever actually intended to let go of 60 fighters, but it sure hasn't happened.
I wonder though, has it? Like, and I say that not in terms of a tinfoil hat kind of approach, but there are fighters in the roster that are still technically on the roster that haven't fought in years, and the UFC can quietly cut and get rid of and just kind of remove their roster page and move on. Like, I haven't looked at I think there's a Twitter page that is an automated page that shows like removals and listings. I know Tom Feely of Sherdog is very quick to point out a lot of those, but I wouldn't actually be surprised if there is a significant number of fighters you're like where we'd hear and be like, huh, I didn't know they were still fighting, like Dennis Seaver, that kind of name where you're like, I didn't know they were still on the roster, like BJ Penn. Like, he could be released. Well, we know what's going to happen. Like Anderson Silva, it could very well add up. We might actually have had a wide number of names of fighters that were like, I thought they were retired in 2015. What is going on here? They're not all coming back. And we never know about it. But at the same time, Ben and Trent are right on. That is the ultimate try and get good faith from the company to be like, look, if you take these fights, maybe you'll stay on the roster. If you step in on short notice and get these things. I mean, look at Hannah Cyphers. I like Hannah Cyphers. I think she's a good enough fighter. She's had a lot of tough matchups and a lot of short notice opportunities. She's lost 4 in a row this past year, and she's getting another fight next year in the near future. And I don't agree or disagree with that. I'm just pointing out the fact that she curried the right favor by taking a fight. What was it, a week or 2 weeks after getting knocked out? So that the UFC kind of made it known that these fighters are going to be checked out. But at the same time, don't be surprised if we at every card a losing fighter or two is gone, like Duffy and Schillen's cut list actually coming to true life, like the losing fighter between Sarah Morris and Vanessa Mello. That very well may be, there may be more pink slip fights than we realize to get to that number.
Good points there. I'm kind of at a wait and see with this theory. Trent definitely normally nails it right on the head when talking about certain things that shady business practices that we're used to coming out of the UFC. This one, I could see it being both ways. I could see maybe that number is actually 30, 35, 40, something like that. And the rest of it is simply posturing to kind of push the fighters to do the bidding of the promotion right now. So we'll see. I mean, I quite honestly will not be surprised if every fight night, like we just get a list of cuts, the next Monday. That would not surprise me if that's the trend going into say March or April. Then we know that 60, that number was pretty real. So
like Monday we get releases and Tuesday we get the ranking updates, that kind of regular.
Yeah, exactly. That becomes part of the regular news cycle. And I think
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So that wouldn't surprise me, especially once once the Contender Series starts back up. And we see like everybody who won a fight is getting signed every single week. Yeah, then we know someone else is getting their pink slip right behind that.
Good all right, fellas. UFC puppy mill.
Yeah, you know it. So now I think it's an appropriate time to move on to perhaps the greatest titled segment in all of media history, and that is I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not throughout the week since we last recorded. So, Ben, I will begin with you. What is your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, it appears that recent unsuccessful UFC middleweight title challenger Paulo Costa might have a fight in the works. It sounds as though he might be preparing to fight Robert Whittaker. That's the claim that's coming from his side. Whittaker's camp hasn't confirmed that, but Whittaker is preparing for a fight. That's not what I'm bringing up. I'm bringing up that Sherdog correspondent and MMA journalism pioneer Marcelo Alonso reported that Costa has been down training with the Pitbull Brothers. I just want to know what took so long for this to happen. Was there ever a match more made in heaven than those three dudes hanging out. It's like three Russian nesting dolls of just salty, mad Brazilians hanging out together. I want the video. I want to see all the video of it. I want to, it can be in Portuguese and I can just read the subtitles, but a match made in heaven is Paulo Costa and Patricio and Patrick Freire. I am surprised that it took this long, and I hope it becomes an ongoing relationship.
All right. Jay, what is your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I am both surprised and not surprised that Dana White still has some sort of a hitch in his step about open scoring. And he was asked in a recent one of those the kind of the PR Q&A things that he answered, and he talked about, he just made up a bunch of things about how fighters that know they're up rounds are going to coast and it's going to be terrible, and we as the media and stats people like myself have some data, some information. It's not a massive sample size. It's not a ton of, but everything we've seen so far. I mean, you can't make sweeping conclusions, but everything we've seen so far, the fighter that is leading in the second round, going to the third round, more than likely wins the third round. So clearly they're not taking that round off and backing away and running away like a Caleb Starnes or anything like that. So it's too bad, but it makes me wonder, what's it going to take? Like the Kansas Athletic Commission, Adam Rohrbach has been doing a spectacular job pushing open scoring for LFA, Invicta, other small events, even BK. Interesting. I didn't know that. In Europe, many European organizations like the ISKA use open scoring. So you wonder what it's going to take for people to come around to realize, oh, this isn't that bad after all. Your impressions and your tradition, they don't mean nothing but a hill of beans. Like, how can you know that the fight's going to be bad if there's open scoring? You just think it will, and I don't know. I saw it and it rubbed me the wrong way, and I go, how is this still the argument in 2021? But still the argument in 2021.
Well, they still play new metal music, so that shows you how progressive the UFC can be.
Hey, Face the Pain, baby.
Yeah, I mean, like we just got rid of Face the Pain, just got rid of it. So,
and the techno new metal remix too.
Oh, the dubstep one that was super
bad.
Garbage. That's like one of the worst things that I've ever heard.
Yeah,
I was personally insulted when they played that.
That was
like,
bad.
wow, like what type of fucking sucker do you think I am? When I heard that shit. But anyway, let's move on here. My I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment comes courtesy of the UFC Unfiltered podcast, which proved itself to be quite filtered. After Anthony Pettis parted ways with a promotion to seek the $1 million prize at the top of the PFL bracket, his mentions, like he was mentioned throughout the podcast, and they were edited out. However, whoever was in charge of the editing process did not remove the notes from the public post. So if you looked at the UFC Unfiltered page, you would see markings where it says remove mention of Pettis, remove mention of Pettis, remove mention of Pettis. Like, yes, Jay, you had one job. Absolutely ridiculous. I'm not surprised. This is kind of what we've come to expect. This is, the thing that does surprise me though is the need to get rid of Pettis's mentions as if you were Randy Couture. It's, to our knowledge, it's not like he has some sort of contentious relationship with Dana White. He's actually moved on to an ESPN Plus broadcasting partner at PFL. This isn't like him going to Bellator and on a competing service. No, he's actually still under the ESPN tree. So I'm surprised by that, but not surprised at the UFC's petty. UFC's petty is matchless.
I would like to point out, however, that the UFC, in a statistical standpoint, from its official stats and records, has scrubbed fighters that are no longer with the organization. See also one Vitor Belfort, who holds the all-time UFC knockout record with 12. No, not on any official UFC records. Anderson Silva with 11 has it. So, Pettyweight champion of the world is fully defending his title again.
See, I didn't realize it went that far. Like I could think of when they snubbed Tito Ortiz from the
straight Frank Shamrocking him.
Yeah, like I remember, and same things that they did with both Shamrocks. I know there were times where the UFC had bad relationships with both Shamrocks and Tito Ortiz. So I'm like, okay, and Couture, so that makes sense. Pettis just seemed like a guy who just moved on business wise, similar to what Eddie Alvarez did when he left for one championship. Like no bad blood. He was just no longer going to be in the octagon. So there's
When's
that.
the last time you've heard Tim Sylvia's name on any UFC anything ever?
I mean, they didn't want to mention Tim Sylvia when he was their heavyweight champion. So
yeah,
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
Being embarrassed of Timmy is not new to the UFC.
No, I'll give you that.
That's
the look of disdain when Dana would put the belt around his waist. I think it was very clear that they didn't want him as champion. All right, gentlemen. So we're going to move on from that to close out with a couple more topics. One of these is not fun in the least bit. Very, very disturbing. We got a report late last week from Eric Howell at Miami News. Broke the story that UFC bantamweight Erin Rivera was wanted for 2 counts of attempted murder. The story he got a little more light shed on it when a police report came across his desk, saying that he had seems like some sort of psychotic episode where he stabbed his 2 sisters. Fortunately, they survived, contrary to previous reports that this was, a double homicide that he was facing. Now he seems to be getting some sort of mental treatments in addition to whatever legal trouble that he's in. Fellas, I know this is speculation, so I don't want to get too far down a rabbit hole and make any definitive statements here, but we've had similar conversations about disturbing behavior from fighters. I definitely remember the allegations surrounding Tony Ferguson and the domestic issues that he was having. What role CTE might have played. I know we've talked about this with several other fighters in bad behavior, Mike Perry probably being the most recent. I mean, should we be having this conversation more in mixed martial arts? Like the toll that this takes, or are we dealing with an isolated incident here?
Well, it's clearly not that isolated, considering that you were able to quickly come up with a couple other examples. It's mercifully rare at the highest level of the sport. And I mean, thank goodness that the initially confused reports ended up being the less severe of, the spectrum of possibility that we saw in the first hours. But when you read that police report, it is still horrifying. Chilling, the reports of the injuries to his sisters, and then his behavior in the wake of it just I'm not a doctor. If I were a doctor, wouldn't mean I was his doctor, but it sounded like a psychotic break. He sounds like somebody who needs help. I mean, he might need legal consequences. He definitely needs help. MMA has always drawn and will continue to draw a disproportionate share of hurt people, physically hurt people, emotionally, psychologically damaged people. It draws a disproportionate number of criminals, people with poor social skills, people who are actively antisocial. That's always going to be part of it. It's unrealistic to expect a sport of just, perfectly manicured George St. Pierre's at the post-fight presser in their suits.
Who openly spoke of mental issues dealing with throughout his title career.
Ironically, yes. Yeah. And I don't know what the answer is. I cringe and hesitate to say that a psychological evaluation should be part of pre-fight physicals, since we can apparently barely get the physical side of pre-fight physicals down. Yeah. Shouts to Michael Bisping. Shouts to, Kimbo versus Dada, like two men that should not have been doing any sort of athletic pursuit. They got licensed to punch each other. So just taken as an isolated case, I hope he gets the help that he clearly needs. And if not like an actual trip through the criminal justice system, whatever needs to happen to keep his family safe from him while he gets that help, I hope that happens as well.
Definitely. Yeah. So, definitely best wishes to, Erwin Rivera's family, as they deal with this. Like unimaginable that police report, like you said, was horrifying, to read. So I certainly hope he gets the help that he needs and his family is safe in the meantime. Now we'll close things out with some good news. Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling, finally official. Aljo gets his title shot. This will be part of the triple header at UFC 259. All right, yeah, all these numbers, lots of numbers. So fellas, happy to see Aljo finally get this title shot. Initial thoughts on how this fight breaks down.
I've been saying, and I'm going to continue to wave this banner until the fight happens, and I'm proved to be either an idiot or something of a Nostradamus or whatever. Man, I respect Peter Yan's game. I've seen him do some good things in the cage, but his level of competition will eternally be the zigging and zagging up the way of the division when you're fighting fighters on ranked fighters on losing streaks. And doing worse to them. I mean, MMA math doesn't count at all. But like, this is a guy in Aljo Sterling who tuned up Jimmy Rivera on the feet, and then Jimmy Rivera's next fight was fighting Peter Yan, who did better against Peter Yan than Aljo Sterling did. So I came into this fight and I did some statistical study because me. To think that Aljo Sterling, his takedown game is so aggressive, and if he wants to take down, he gets it, because we anecdotally can picture him hitting these big high amplitude takedowns, turning them into something and doing something great with them. Well, not actually the case after all. Like looking at Peter Yan and his takedown defense and fighting guys like Uriah Faber and Rivera and Jinsu Sun. Oddly enough, Jinsu Sun attempted more takedowns than any other opponent on Peter Yan. But looking at all the great names and thinking, oh man, he hasn't fought a good takedown artist. Well, Faber and Rivera, those guys have a takedown accuracy rate of about 30%. You know what Aljo Sterling's takedown accuracy rate is? 29%. So clearly he is not the mercurial wrestler that we picture him to be, unless he can do it a different way and chain takedowns together and whatnot. I mean, I'm not a wrestler, so I can't break that down like somebody that excelled at wrestling like Duffy did, but I can't really see Yan doing well unless he keeps it at a safe distance and kicks Aljo Sterling in the face, or knees Aljo Sterling in the face. See also Marlon Moraes. See also Paley Landy Jones against Matt Hughes. Hey, you want to take me down? Eat this knee. It could be fun. It could be competitive, but it's about damn time. That's all I really got to say. It's about time.
Ben, anything you want to add to that?
It's about damn time. And this is a win-win. I mean, if Aljamain Sterling wins here, it is about damn time. He waited and waited and waited. And if Yan wins, I have to rescind a lot of, my criticism of the path he kind of took to the title. I believe he is currently ranked third or fourth at bantamweight by the Sherdog panel. No, it's third. It's Cejudo, Sterling, Jan, and Sandhagen. You know, like if Jan beats,
No, Giannis 4.
Jan is 4, so he's behind Sandhagen as well.
Yeah,
I mean, if Jan wins, he jumps at least to number 2, maybe to number 1. You know, I could see him jumping over absentee Cejudo, at least on my ballot. It'll teach us a lot. While Jay pointed out that Sterling, doesn't hit his takedowns at any higher a rate than Uriah Faber or Jimmy Rivera, I think he may go after them more relentlessly. 30% of 15 tries might be enough to do it.
No, makes sense there. Now, fellas, what I want to point out here before we get out of here about this UFC 259. The big thing about the announcement, beyond the fact that Aljo finally getting his title shot, was that, man, this is the third title fight announced for this card, which if you look at what it looks like on Tapology right now, it is packed. Jan Blachowicz and Israel Adesanya, the headliner, followed by Amanda Nunes versus Megan Anderson, and then, of course, the aforementioned Jan versus Sterling. Is it too soon to get excited about this card? I know that when this announcement was made, everyone was ready to do a backflip, but we are weeks out. The official date is March 6th, so we're just roughly shy of 2 months before this bell is supposed to ring and to open up the event here. Are we getting excited about this too quick? Should we pump the brakes?
Swing or miss. Those are the top 3 fights on the card when it hits the cage. 7 weeks from now.
Miss
big time.
Then it's too early.
Yeah. What a absolute heartbreaker to have this sport, knowing the rug is going to be pulled out from underneath us. But it's fighting in the age of COVID. It's God. You stack up this 5-fight. Look at this 5-fight main card. Thiago Santos and Rocket Wreckage, Dominic Cruz and Casey Kenny, Peter Yan, Aljamain Sterling, Nunes, Anderson, Blachowicz, Adesanya. You're not a weak fight on the card unless you think Nunes is going to be a squash match over Anderson, which, could be, might not, but it's still a title fight over a fighter on a win streak. So that's something at featherweight. There aren't many fighters on win streaks at 145 pounds, but damn, that is a main card. That's almost the way you want main cards to be. But then you look at what's going to happen in the surrounding area. Like, I don't know if we have a lot of information for the March cards. The one around that, Reyes Prochazka, that's a good card in February, but we don't have much otherwise besides like Nikita Krylov, Ankalaev, and Sunsao Barcelos. So okay, that's a good fight night. But then the one after it, the biggest fight on the card is like a Davy Grant fight, so we don't really have a whole lot of riches here, which makes me wonder if the UFC knows, and maybe there's some strategic thing I can't fathom, if the UFC knows that it is going to put on cards every week until we die, why load up this card so much? Like, there are legitimately all 5 fights on the main card could headline a fight night. Benavidez Askarov isn't far off. Makhachev Dober, that's a headliner.
What did Benavidez do to these people?
Man, he must owe somebody money or had a wife entanglement or something, because man, oh man,
somebody's got a crush on Macon and the matchmaking office. That's what's going on here. That is just not nice to Joe B. He's like one of the sweetest guys in the sport. Like, man, damn. But I'm with you, Jay, on this one. This doesn't seem like something we should be quite ready to jump off a bridge in excitement for, considering how fast these cards drop off. How far we're not even a month removed from the December 19th fight night, which was like this star-studded affair until COVID, until a few random injuries, and until reality set in, and we were left with, the scraps of a card. It ended up being an entertaining card still, but it just wasn't what it was supposed to be. And we've told this story time after time after time. You remember when way back in the time where we didn't have to wear masks to go outside, there was these two guys. Then the UFC had tried to pair them up before, Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson, and they announced that this fight was going to take place at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, and it was like going to be in March. And I think this was in December that this announcement was made, and everybody was doing backflips like, yes, finally. There were a few of us that were saying, pump your brakes. You never know what can happen. So I'm going to go out and say on almost the year anniversary of pumping our brakes, because you never know what's going to happen for that aforementioned fight, go ahead and pump your brakes, because this card is not going to look like this come March 6th. So I'm not going to be holding my breath to see what I see before me right now.
I think for the rest of the time I watch fights, I will be kind of in guarded, preparation of the event. I mean, if nothing, I mean, the COVID era, sure. And I actually mislabeled this event. It wasn't UFC 161, UFC 146, the big super duper ultra heavyweight card, where they put all the heavyweights on there, and it was going to be Dos Santos. And he was going to fight Overeem, I think, for the title. And it was a whole bunch of other great fights. And it just turned into Stephen Struve versus LeVar Johnson, which, okay, whatever, fine. Roy Nelson versus Pee Wee Herman and his angry sweater. Like, it was a fight, the card that was such lofty aspirations. And then we got 146, which was still enjoyable. Don't get it twisted. All 5 fights ended within 2 rounds. So I can't really complain, but what could have been. And so 259 to me looks like that card of, you want to look at it and almost want to have like a tontine between a bunch of MMA media to say, okay, which fight's going to fall off? What's the dead pool for the fight that's not going to make it to fight night? Because, man, you're licking your lips at this card and going, too good to be true. Well, cross your fingers.
If we do that MMA media pool of what fights are going to get scrapped, I think the only person that can appropriately hit this will be Casey. So on Twitter at EKC, this will be the guy to place your bets. So
let's set this up. I'm actually interested in doing this. I think that, I mean, you probably don't want to get away with, I don't think Lavinia Souza is going to make it. No, you want to make it like a high stakes tontine. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, let's
off the air or something.
Yeah, I'm down with this one.
And this will in no way feed the narrative that like the media wants the sport to fail.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yeah. All right, fellas. So I think that's an appropriate place to wrap things up. I want to thank our anchor / I guess guest for today, Jay, for making a special appearance despite personal circumstances to join us on the program. Of course, big thanks to Ben, who's always here helping out with the show, and of course, big thanks to me for being so damn sexy. So, you know what you got to do: like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. You can check out their work on SureDog.com. You can check out my work on the Body Lock and MMA on Point. So, stay beautiful, stay positive, stay socially distanced, and always stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.